Hello everyone. Welcome back to our Fluent English podcast channel. Today we have another lesson that will help you improve your listening and speaking English skills. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like. It really helps us out and ensures you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Your support means a lot, and we appreciate every single one of you. Let's dig in. Hello and welcome to another, much anticipated episode of the Fluent English Community Podcast. I'm your regular host, Emma, and I'm genuinely happy and truly delighted that you've decided to spend this valuable time with me today. Whether you're listening to me while navigating the morning rush on your way to work, perhaps tackling those essential household chores like washing dishes, or you've simply found a quiet moment to relax and unwind at home, I want you to feel like you're part of our warm, engaging conversation. Just like we're old friends catching up, because our community is designed precisely to help you improve your English skills in a completely natural, wonderfully relaxed, and thoroughly enjoyable way. So, if for some reason you haven't done so yet, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast. That way, you're absolutely guaranteed not to miss a single episode, each of which could be an important, perhaps even crucial, aid on your ongoing English learning journey. If you see someone at your workplace doing something in the easiest, let's say, perhaps the laziest conceivable way, you might describe their actions by saying they're cutting corners. We generally only use this particular phrase when someone isn't following the proper, established procedure or is doing something not quite how they genuinely should. Consequently, it can be a bit of an insult to tell someone directly, "You're just cutting corners," as it implies a lack of care or thoroughness. Alternatively, you might warn people that you expect them to take their time and do things correctly by stating clearly, "We are not going to cut corners on this project, under any circumstances." If you work somewhere where safety is paramount, like in a factory environment or in the process of manufacturing something, you inherently know how absolutely crucial it is not to cut corners when it comes to adhering to proper safety procedures, as the consequences could be severe. Now, imagine you're at work and doing something for the very first time, and you genuinely need someone to teach you how to do it step by step, guiding you through each part of the process. In such a situation, you'll want to use the phrase, "walk me through it." So, when you tell someone, "walk me through it," it clearly signifies that you need them to demonstrate and explain how to do it. Exactly. You need them to explain everything pertinent about the process in detail. When it comes to computers and new software, for instance, I know that older folks in the workplace often need a tech specialist to patiently walk them through everything step by step, especially if it's something the person has never encountered or done before. Conversely, if you want to tell someone you're going to explain something in detail or teach them how to do something specific, you can confidently say, "I will walk you through it." Or you can even combine the two related phrases for emphasis, "I'll walk you through it step by step," ensuring you understand each part. The next English phrase is very important if you're going to criticize something or make a potentially sensitive suggestion to someone but don't want to seem rude or disrespectful in any way. You can effectively use the phrase, "with all due respect," to add a layer of politeness and deference to your criticism or suggestion. So, if you're addressing someone who is your superior or boss within the company or at your workplace, you might appropriately say, "With all due respect, sir/madam, I do think there is a potentially better way to get this done." This phrasing clearly indicates that you're not trying to overtly criticize them or undermine their authority in any manner. You just feel you should suggest something you believe to be beneficial, and you're trying to be exceptionally respectful by adding the softening phrase, "with all due respect." Or, if someone offers you a different proposal or some form of criticism, and you fundamentally disagree with it, you can politely state, "With all due respect, I disagree with that assessment." So this phrase is incredibly useful when you're just trying to maintain politeness in a more formal work setting or a delicate interpersonal exchange. The phrase, "to put a pin in something," essentially means to postpone or temporarily pause the discussion of a particular topic, usually with the intention of returning to it later. You'll hear this phrase used all the time in a corporate or business environment. This phrase is especially important and frequently utilized during business meetings or conference calls where there are many different people involved, a structured agenda of what needs to be accomplished, and a strictly set amount of time allocated for the meeting. If something is being talked about too much, taking up excessive time, and for too long, you, or perhaps the meeting facilitator, might suggest, let's put a pin in this for now and agree to talk about it at the next meeting. So, maybe you're discussing complex topics like the annual budget in a meeting, and everyone is talking, and then talking some more. To regain control of the agenda, you could say, let's put a pin in this particular discussion, and I will email everyone more detailed information about it later. This action means you're going to pause the current conversation and address it via email later so you don't spend an inordinate amount of valuable meeting time discussing that one single topic. Have you ever met someone who does everything meticulously by the book? If you're someone who does everything by the book, it signifies that you follow every rule, guideline, and established procedure without deviation. And, consequently, you're not the type of person who generally likes to break the rules or stray from the norm. So, by the book directly means according to the official rulebook or established standards. Perhaps, in contrast, you're a more creative individual, and you like to come up with your own innovative ways of doing things, even if it means bending the rules just a little bit from time to time. In that case, you might admit, I don't always do things strictly by the book. This can serve as a subtle warning to someone that you're kind of a rule breaker, or at least a rule bender, or that you tend to do things out of the conventional order or differently than most people typically would. So this phrase is very useful and widely understood, especially in the workplace, where there are often so many rules, detailed procedures, and prescribed correct ways of doing things within a structured business environment. When you're setting goals, it's especially important to look not just at the small, immediate details, but also to consider things more broadly, taking in the wider context. A common phrase you can use for this is to say, let's look at the big picture. So, maybe you work in sales, for example. And for the current quarter, a 3-month period of the year, your sales figures are unfortunately down. But, trying to maintain perspective, you could suggest, let's look at the big picture for the entire year. Overall, perhaps, we had pretty good profits or achieved other significant milestones. This approach means you're not just looking at the performance of one isolated quarter. You want to look more broadly, considering the performance across the entire year to get a more complete understanding. Or, maybe you want to warn someone that it's critically important not to look at just one client or one single project, lest you come up short in your overall objectives. So, when you don't meet someone's expectations, or you just don't quite reach your intended goal, or even if you're very close to it but don't fully achieve it, you can say you came up short. Especially when we're talking about financial matters and goals for earning money for the year. If you don't quite reach your predetermined target, you might regretfully say, we came up short on our yearly income goal or our anticipated profit goals. Or, on a more personal level, if you're just studying diligently for a test or an important exam and don't quite get the grade or score you were hoping for, you can express your slight disappointment by saying, I came up short on the test. The next phrase, to hit the ground running, is a very fun and dynamic one to use. When you're eager and ready to start a new project or activity with immediate energy and enthusiasm, you can declare, we are going to hit the ground running. I assume this vivid phrase comes from the idea of soldiers or paratroopers bravely jumping out of a plane and immediately running into battle. They're exceptionally eager to engage with the task at hand. They're often said to hit the ground running, metaphorically meaning they were running even before their feet actually touched the ground. So, if you're trying to motivate people in your workplace to finish an urgent project, you might enthusiastically say, let's hit the ground running to finish this project well in time. This implies let's be highly enthusiastic, proactive, and quickly undertake the work we need to do. Or if someone is new to a job, but it's a demanding, fast-paced environment where they'll have to learn a lot very quickly, you might tell them, somewhat bracingly, you are just going to have to hit the ground running at this job, aren't you? And what about being a thinker outside the box? The phrase, to think outside of the box, means you come up with creative, unconventional, and often innovative solutions for things. It's often very valuable in any workplace to have someone on the team who can consistently think outside the box to find novel solutions to challenging problems. Because if we always try the same old, established methods to solve a problem, they don't always work, especially for new or complex challenges. I often think of people who make groundbreaking inventions as prime examples of people who think outside the box. I think of the person who invented the Dyson vacuum cleaner, for instance. He was definitely someone who thought outside the box, because traditional vacuums were supposed to just have standard round wheels, and instead of a wheel, he ingeniously put a ball so the Dyson vacuum could turn effortlessly in all directions. And a fun fact for you, he first thought outside the box about wheelbarrows, but he then cleverly applied the same ball technology to make a vacuum cleaner, and it turned out to be significantly more successful than his first invention, the ball barrow, which looked somewhat like this. So, if you want to be successful in inventing new things or just finding effective solutions in the workplace, it's incredibly important to cultivate the ability to think outside the box. Or, as I said earlier, to be an outside-the-box thinker. Now, speaking of problems, when you're diligently trying to find a solution to a persistent problem, and it just isn't working out despite your best efforts, you'll eventually have to use this phrase, back to the drawing board. When you say, let's go back to the drawing board, it clearly means let's start all over again from the beginning, because our previous attempt was unfortunately unsuccessful, or something we tried simply didn't work as expected. So, as a result, we need to come up with some entirely new ideas once again. The next phrase is quite interesting and evocative. If you tell someone to have their ear to the ground, or you proactively say, I'll have my ear to the ground, it means you're going to pay very close, careful attention to what's happening around you, and you're going to try to hear everything people are talking about, not merely out of idle curiosity, but just because, perhaps, you're working on a specific project or situation that you need more information about. For example, maybe you're wondering if your company is going to change an important policy, but your boss hasn't officially told you yet if they are. In that case, you'll have your ear to the ground and listen intently to what other people in the workplace are saying and try to figure out if a significant change is indeed going to be made when you're talking about achieving a specific goal. Or you're in the process of making a deal with someone in business, and they unexpectedly change what needs to be done or the conditions at the very last minute. You can accurately say they are moving the goalposts. And it's so incredibly annoying and frustrating when this happens. For instance, say your company initially says you need to reach a certain sales target for the year, and you're very close to achieving it through hard work, and then, just as you're about to succeed, they suddenly say, actually, we're going to make it significantly higher. They effectively move the goalposts on you. This action means that instead of you scoring a goal or achieving your original target, they moved it further up, thereby making it considerably harder to reach. So this is just a common phrase we can use when describing someone who makes it more difficult for you to achieve a goal or succeed. Even if you've been working diligently hard on that specific goal from the very start, it really feels like they're unfairly moving the goalposts. The next phrase is very easy to use to describe a situation where someone is giving up after many attempts and much effort. You can say that someone is throwing in the towel. And this particular phrase is quite similar in meaning to waving a white flag and surrender, or, surrendering in a boxing match or another competitive sport where a trainer might throw the towel into the ring to stop the fight. It just simply means you're giving up, even if you tried very hard and put in considerable effort. If you want to encourage someone, even if they've been understandably frustrated trying to do something and it just isn't working out for them, you want to tell them not to give up just yet. You can say, well, don't throw in the towel just yet, maybe one more try will do it. So this phrase is really great. It's quite easy to use and widely understood. Be sure to add it to your active vocabulary. If you want to enthusiastically tell someone that they are absolutely right about a particular problem or their insightful guess about something, you can emphatically say, you hit the nail on the head. So this phrase is very good and effective to use in the workplace. It's just a very impressive phrase, and it clearly gets the point across, signifying something like, you're spot on, your assessment is perfect. You hit the nail on the head. Maybe your boss observes and says, it seems like no one can do their job effectively right now because we're having so many persistent problems with our technology or essential software, and you completely agree with that assessment. You agree wholeheartedly with their analysis of the problem. You can then respond, thank you. You really hit the nail on the head with that observation. It just means you completely agree with them. And their analysis or their summary of the problem was absolutely, unequivocally correct. It's actually kind of a compliment to someone to tell them you hit the nail on the head. Have you ever heard of someone throwing a curveball? Well, in the sport of baseball, this would be when a pitcher throws the ball, and it unexpectedly curves or turns at the very last minute, making it very difficult for the batter to hit the ball. In everyday life, we use this idiom to throw a curveball when someone unexpectedly changes a situation at the last minute. And it completely throws you off your game, confuses you significantly, or creates an unforeseen problem or complication. If you want to warn someone that you'll have to change something at the last minute, and acknowledge that it might confuse them or potentially cause a problem, you can say apologetically, "I'm sorry to throw a curveball like this." It means, I'm genuinely sorry for changing things so suddenly and potentially causing confusion or disruption. To keep their cards close to your chest. When we use this particular phrase, it just means we're not telling many people about our exact plan or what precisely we're going to do. We're deliberately trying to be secretive or strategically discreet when we use this phrase to keep your cards close to your chest. When you're in the midst of negotiating an important business deal, for example, it's very important to keep your cards close to your chest. You don't always want to reveal to the other party, that we're willing to pay a lot of money for this particular item or service. Instead, you want to try to see if you can negotiate a fair and reasonable price before letting them know the exact maximum amount of money you budgeted, because maybe, just maybe, you could pay less if you play your cards right. So, keep your cards close to your chest. Use this phrase effectively when you're being strategically secretive, particularly in business negotiations or other sensitive situations. Have you ever heard of the phrase, "thrown someone under the bus"? I know, this phrase sounds absolutely terrible, and indeed it describes a terrible action, but that's why it's such a potent idiom in English. When you unfairly shift blame onto someone else instead of taking personal responsibility for your own actions or mistakes, you can say you threw them under the bus. So, maybe your whole team collectively agrees that you'll all take shared responsibility, whether you perform well or poorly on a project, and then your team performs very poorly. But then, one member selfishly says, "Hey, it's all Lisa's fault. She was the one slacking off and not pulling her weight." In that instance, that person just threw Lisa under the bus. So, that individual didn't want to take any of the blame or responsibility for the team doing poorly. So, they threw her under the bus, meaning they unfairly blamed her for everything bad that happened, likely to protect themselves. So definitely don't do that in your own interactions. But it's certainly useful to know this phrase because it's such an extreme and vivid phrase, to throw someone under the bus. It means to blame them, often unjustly, for your own personal gain or to avoid negative consequences. To open a can of worms. Have you heard this colorful English phrase before? This is another very interesting and highly descriptive one. So, when you start talking about a particularly difficult, complicated, or problematic situation, and once you brought up this thorny topic, everyone now has to talk about it and try to sort it out, often reluctantly. You can then say, perhaps with a hint of regret, "I'm sorry, I think I just opened a can of worms." This implies that the topic is really complicated and potentially contentious, and once you start talking about it, everyone has to just keep talking about it. It can't be easily ignored or dismissed. You can't easily close a metaphorical can of worms, which is obviously not a real can, but that's precisely why we use this vivid expression, because it perfectly describes the kind of situation where, once you bring up a certain topic, you and everyone else involved will now have to talk about it at length. So sometimes in meetings, when someone inadvertently opens a can of worms, everyone else kind of dreads it because it often makes the meeting go on forever and ever. Everyone feels compelled to share their opinion and argue about the topic, and at the end, you might just sigh and say, "I'm so sorry I opened this can of worms, I didn't realize it would be so complex." This last phrase I'm about to share really makes me think of working on a boat or a ship. But you definitely don't need to work on a boat or ship to use this particular phrase effectively. The phrase is all hands on deck, so you might receive an email at your English-speaking workplace that urgently states, "This upcoming meeting is all hands on deck." This clearly means everyone in the company, or at least everyone relevant to the situation, needs to be present at the meeting. It's mandatory. If you're urgently saying, "We need everybody, all hands on deck for this critical project," it means we need everyone to work really hard and contribute their efforts to finish it successfully, usually under a tight deadline. Usually, you'll use this phrase if you need everyone to work together on something very important or very urgent. You need all hands on deck, another day, another dollar. This is such a characteristically American phrase because it really equates the passage of time directly with the earning of money. So often, when we wake up and perhaps don't particularly want to go to work, we might just sigh and say, "Well, another day, another dollar." It means, in essence, I just need to go to work today. I need to do my job as required so I can get paid for my efforts. And once the workday is over, it's over, and I'll be back home. So you might frequently hear American English speakers use this somewhat resigned phrase. Another day, another dollar. I've got to get to work. Now, when you say this sentence, "I've got to get to work," it really flows together smoothly. I've got to get to work. I've got to get to work. So try to practice saying that while listening to this lesson for better fluency. I've got to get to work. It just means you're running out of time, or it's simply time to go to work. So you might be enjoying breakfast and a nice, relaxed conversation, and then suddenly you glance at the clock and exclaim, "Oh, it's 7 o'clock, I've got to get to work." It means I need to leave right now, without further delay. Often we use these related expressions concerning our schedule. We say, "I'm running on time," "I'm running early," or "I'm running late." If you're on time, it means you'll get to work or any other intended destination exactly at the scheduled or expected time. If you're running early, it means you have some extra time to spare. You'll probably be at your destination or work comfortably early. And if you're running late, this is the common expression we use to say we need to hurry up because we're going to be late if we don't. If we don't get moving quickly, we'll probably arrive later than expected or desired. Try not to be late, of course, because it's so incredibly stressful for everyone involved. When it's time to eat lunch during the workday, when you're at work, you can just simply say to your colleagues, "Let's go to lunch." This means let's take a break from work, and maybe we're just having lunch together in our office break room, or perhaps we're actually going out somewhere nearby for lunch, but essentially, it's just lunchtime. Let's go to lunch. Now, another common verb we use when talking about going to eat is. We often say, "Let's grab lunch together." You can use this versatile phrase for any meal, really. Let's grab a quick snack together. Let's grab breakfast together before the meeting. It simply means, let's go and get this meal together. It's a very informal and friendly way of saying let's eat. The next 5 sentences will help you talk effectively about how busy you are, or aren't, during the workday. If you want to say you're having a relatively easy day with not much pressure, you can say, "Today is light," or more explicitly, "My workload is light today." This clearly means there's not much to do, and you're not feeling overwhelmed. This would be the complete opposite of being very busy or swamped. Or you can say, "Today is a breeze." We call something a breeze when it's exceptionally easy to do, requiring little effort. So, you could boastfully say, "Getting a job is a breeze for me because I'm very highly qualified." This means it's generally easy for you to find any job because you possess a lot of desirable qualifications. Maybe you have a lot of relevant work experience, or you have a significant amount of specialized education that employers really like when you apply for a job. When you want to say you're busy with something specific, you can say you're tied up with it. A common sentence you can use is, "I'm tied up with calls all this afternoon." Or you can simply say, "I'm tied up all afternoon." Unfortunately, this clearly means you're very busy and unavailable. When we say tied up, imagine someone literally can't move because their hands are tied. But they're not really physically tied, of course, they just have a lot of people to talk to, numerous meetings, or a lot of urgent things to do. So they can't give their attention to anyone else at that moment. If you want to say your boss is busy and unavailable, you can politely inform someone, "They are tied up today." This means he or she can't talk to anyone else or take on additional tasks right now. Another expressive way to say we have a lot to do, perhaps an overwhelming amount, is to say, we are up to our neck. We can exclaim, I am up to my neck in meetings today. This vividly means I have so many meetings scheduled. Again, implying no time for anything else during the day except for those previously scheduled meetings. If you want to say you've been incredibly busy solving a lot of unexpected problems or dealing with crises, you can use this rather colorful sentence. You can say, I've put out a ton of fires today. It's like every problem at your job or in your office is a metaphorical fire. And you're the dedicated firefighter, and you need to metaphorically pour water on them or, in other words, solve the problem urgently, so this is a very common idiom. To put out fires means to solve urgent and often unexpected problems. So, here are 4 phrases that will probably be quite useful and are commonly heard when you're talking about the end of the workday. You can, of course, casually say, let's call it quits. This just means let's end the day's work. It's a really informal, very common phrase. Alright team, let's call it quits for today. Or you can similarly say, let's call it a day. This also means it's the end of the workday. We're going to officially call it the end of the day. But we just say it more concisely, let's call it a day. And 2 really fun phrases that are also used quite often, especially towards the end of the week. You can exclaim, thank God it's Friday, TGIF. This just means I'm so glad the weekend is finally here. It's the last workday of the week, and relaxation is near. Or, if it's the middle of the week, specifically Wednesday. Sometimes American English speakers will cheerfully say, Happy Hump Day. We think of a hump as a camel's hump or the crest of a hill. And when we get past Wednesday in the work week, it means there are only 2 more days left until the much-anticipated weekend. So we playfully call the middle of the week Hump Day. And it's kind of a joking, informal phrase we often use with friends and colleagues in English, Hump Day for Wednesday, signifying we're over the hardest part of the week. Let's talk about leaving work and some common sentences you might hear or need to use in English when you're finishing up at work and moving on to the rest of your day's activities. So, when we talk about traffic jams that are barely moving or completely stationary in major cities in the United States, of course, the traffic can be absolutely terrible. Just like in many major cities all around the world, we often say we're in bumper-to-bumper traffic. You can complain, I'm stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, I'll be late. This means there are so many cars packed together that they're like cars in a crowded parking lot, and their bumpers are practically touching on the road. Sometimes, when there's road construction, and it feels like there's always construction somewhere, and we consequently have to take a different route because either the traffic is so terribly congested, or the usual road is closed, we take a different way home or to our destination than we normally would. We call this alternative route a detour. You might say, I have to take a detour because of the accident on the main road. Or sometimes in English, if we have an unexpected but perhaps pleasant stop on the way to somewhere we're going, we might also say, I took a little detour on the way here and picked up some delicious ice cream. Something unexpected that you stop and do. Sometimes we might call that a detour, but usually, we use the sentence I have to take a detour when we need to go around heavy traffic or navigate around construction work on the road. I'm running a few errands on my way home from work. The word errands simply means tasks, chores, or small jobs you need to do. These are typically things you need to do by getting in your car or leaving your house. You might need to buy something, deliver something, or take something somewhere. For example, my usual errands often include buying groceries for the week, sending mail or packages at the local post office, and maybe grabbing a coffee on the go, things like that. Just very simple, everyday tasks you do while driving around are commonly called running errands. And if you need to buy food at the grocery store, a very common sentence you can use is, I'm picking up a few groceries on the way home. To pick up is a very versatile phrasal verb that often means to get, to collect, or to buy. I'm picking up a few groceries is probably the most informal and common way to say we're going to buy some food at the grocery store. If your car is running low on gas, we commonly say, I'm stopping to get gas. Or you can also say, I'm stopping for gas. This clearly means you're making a stop specifically for gasoline for your car. you can say, I'm getting gas, or, more dramatically, I'm running on empty. Or sometimes Americans even say, I'm running on E. I urgently need to get gas. The E on the fuel gauge, of course, stands for empty. When you look at the fuel gauge in your car, you'll see E for empty. And in conversational English, we like to just say E for empty. And sometimes, I personally am always a bit paranoid that I'm going to run out of gas completely, so I tend to get gas when my tank is already at about half full. I just like to have a full tank. It makes me feel very happy and satisfied, and less anxious. In that situation, I'll say, I'm just topping off the gas. This means the gas tank isn't nearly empty. In fact, it's probably half full or even more, but I'm just going to add a little more gas while we're stopped at the station anyway. Similarly, if you top off a drink, it doesn't mean the drink is empty, but you're just filling the glass up to the very top. You're filling the gas tank to the top when you're topping it off. I'm grabbing a quick bite on my way home. This could mean you're getting some food to take home with you, takeout, or you're briefly stopping at a casual restaurant to have a quick dinner before heading home. If you specifically say, I'm picking up dinner, you're usually telling someone at home, maybe your husband or wife, that you're going to bring home an already prepared dinner from a restaurant. You're essentially getting takeout or takeaway food. Sometimes, when my husband is driving home from work, he calls me and asks, did you make dinner tonight, or do you want me to pick up dinner on my way? And sometimes, if I haven't had enough time to cook, perhaps it's been a very busy and hectic day, I'll gratefully say, yes, please. Please pick up dinner. This means, please buy dinner at a restaurant and bring it home so we don't have to cook. And when you're collectively deciding what's for dinner, you can, of course, simply ask, what's for dinner? But you can also ask someone more suggestive questions like, what about Chinese tonight? Or, how does Chinese sound for dinner? This means, how does the idea of Chinese food sound to you? We can easily replace Chinese with any other type of cuisine. How does Italian sound? How does Mexican sound? How does Ethiopian sound? For any type of food, we like to say in the United States, how does it sound? It essentially means, do you like that idea? Does it seem like a good and appealing option for dinner right now? If you have something specific you really like and particularly want to eat for dinner, you can suggest it by saying, I could really go for pizza tonight, or I could go for Italian, or perhaps I could go for Mongolian, whatever type of food it might be. If you say I could go for it, it clearly means you'd really like to eat it. It sounds very appetizing to you at that moment. Let's talk about some common activities you can do when you finally get home from work. You can announce, I'm going to go for a run to get some exercise. Go for a run simply means you're going to go running. Or, for something more relaxed, you can say, I'm going to take a stroll through the park. The phrase, to take a stroll, means to take a pleasant, leisurely walk, usually just for enjoyment, relaxation, and some light exercise. If you want to watch a movie to unwind, you can suggest, let's put on a movie. This simply means, let's start watching a movie, select one and begin. And if you're like me, I often feel the need to pick up the house a bit before bed. This means I need to put everything away in its proper place and generally tidy up the living spaces. I like the dishes to be washed and put away. I prefer the laundry to be done and folded. I like all the kids' toys to be put away neatly. Things like that collectively mean to pick up the house. When I need to do laundry, I typically say, I'm going to run a load of laundry. This means I'm going to start the process by washing a machine full of clothes, and then subsequently put them in the dryer. To run a load of laundry encompasses the entire cycle of washing and drying clothes. And when you have dirty dishes, in the United States, we usually have dishwashers in our kitchens, and we say, we're going to load the dishwasher. This means we're going to take the dirty dishes we used for dinner or any other meal and systematically put them into the dishwasher for cleaning. We say we're going to load the dishwasher. Another very common household chore is taking out the trash. I have to take out the trash once a week. The municipal garbage truck comes to my house on a specific day, picks up my trash can, empties it, then puts it back and drives away. So I need to remember to take out the trash the night before the scheduled pickup. This means I need to put the full trash can by the curb so the garbage truck can easily access it and pick up the trash. When your chores for the day are finally done, and the house is in order, it's time to go to bed. You can announce, "I'm headed to bed now." This just simply means you're going to go to your bedroom. You're going to start getting ready for bed, perhaps brush your teeth, change into pajamas, and then go to sleep. You're just giving a heads up to others in the household, "I'm headed to bed, I'm tired," you're tired and ready for sleep. Or sometimes we use this common idiom. We say, "I'm going to hit the hay." This is an informal way of saying I'm going to go to bed. If you're feeling particularly tired and exhausted, you can say, "I am completely tuckered out," or "I'm really tired out tonight." Both of these phrases mean the same thing. They just mean very, very tired. Something I always like to say, often jokingly, is, "It's way past my bedtime," even if I'm an adult and don't have parents telling me when to go to bed anymore. I like to joke a little and say, "Well, it's way past my bedtime, I should have been asleep hours ago." I get very tired if I stay up too late. One thing I'm definitely guilty of, as many people are, is scrolling social media right before bed. So I might say, somewhat sheepishly, "I'm just going to scroll social media for a few minutes before I turn off the light." This just means I'm going to look at all the various social media apps on my phone. Browsing through feeds. We call this action scrolling. It means you're just passively looking at what's happening on social media platforms. And what I tell my kids every single night as I tuck them in is, "Good night. Sleep tight. Don't let the bedbugs bite." But don't worry, I don't actually have bedbugs in my house. It's just a very common, traditional, and sweet way to say goodnight to children in the United States. So, if you hear an English speaker in the United States say, "Don't let the bedbugs bite," it certainly doesn't mean there are actual bedbugs present there. Hopefully, there are absolutely no bedbugs anywhere nearby. It's just a cute, somewhat old-fashioned thing we often say to each other, especially to kids. Do you have similar charming or funny phrases in your native language for saying goodnight? Please let me know in the comments section because I think this particular one is very funny and quite unique. First, if you're unsure if the other person can hear you on a call, you should definitely say, "Can you hear me?" Okay, can you hear me clearly? Yes or no? If they can't hear you well, they obviously won't be able to answer your question effectively. Another very common phrase you'll encounter. You'll definitely hear it on the phone if the person can't hear you well in English, "You're breaking up." This means your voice is cutting in and out intermittently. "I can't hear your voice completely or consistently." Or, if you want to tell someone that you can't hear them well, maybe you're only catching every other word they say, you can inform them, "You're breaking up a bit, I'm losing parts of what you're saying." If you want to warn someone preemptively that your phone call might not be very stable because you know you're in a very remote area, perhaps out in the countryside. Or maybe you're just somewhere with notoriously not very good cell service, we usually say something like, "Sorry, I have really bad service here. I might break up a little during our call." Or you can say, "I had bad service earlier, please let me know if you can't hear me properly." And this just simply means you have poor or weak cell reception at your current location. When I'm on the phone with someone who's traveling, especially, if they're staying in a hotel, often when they're talking on the phone from certain parts of the building, I start to have trouble hearing them clearly. They might then explain, "Oh, sorry, I'm in an elevator right now." And in an elevator, as you often know, when you're inside a metal enclosure like an elevator, the cell phone signal often can't reach the cell towers effectively and get a good, strong signal. So that's another good warning or explanation you need to know when you're speaking English on the phone and experience reception issues. If you can't hear someone very well whom you know very well, or maybe you just didn't quite understand every single word they said on the phone, we often politely ask, "Can you repeat that, please?" And another common and useful phrase that goes hand in hand with "Can you repeat that?" is, "Sorry, I didn't quite catch that." This means I either didn't hear it completely, or I didn't quite understand the meaning of what was said, and this clearly tells the person you're talking to that you genuinely need them to repeat what they just said, perhaps a bit more slowly or clearly. Here are a few great phrases you'll usually hear at the very beginning of a typical phone conversation in English. Whether you're talking to a familiar friend or a close relative, these phrases are generally quite informal, and you can always comfortably use them at the start of your phone call to set a friendly tone. When my family members call each other, we almost always say, "Hey, what's going on?" or "Hey, what's happening?" This generally means, "What's the reason for your call?" or just "What are you up to?" It's a really common and casual way to start a phone conversation, so, what's going on? And sometimes I call someone and initiate with, "Hey, what's going on?" Or someone calls me and greets me with, "Hey, what's going on?" Usually, it just means you want to hear what they're up to during their day, what they've been doing. You genuinely want to hear how they're feeling, how their family is doing, and so on. It's just a very general and friendly way to start an informal conversation on the phone. The most common way I personally answer the question, "What's going on?" especially when I'm not doing much of anything important or don't have a lot of time for a lengthy phone call, is just to say, "Oh, nothing much, really. What's up with you?" This just means, "How are you doing?" But it also subtly prompts, "What's the reason for your call?" It's a good way in an informal phone conversation to just gently get to the main point or purpose of the conversation without being too abrupt. When you call someone close to you, like your mother, grandmother, father, or grandfather, often, you don't have a very specific or urgent reason for calling, you're just calling out of courtesy, care, or habit, and you primarily want to make sure they're healthy, generally happy, and don't need anything from you at the moment. There are 3 common ways to express this intention on the phone in English. You can say, "I'm just calling to catch up." To catch up with someone means just casually talking about your life, discussing how you've been doing lately, how they've been doing, and again, perhaps talking about their health, the kids, or whatever else comes to mind. It's just a very general, relaxed, and informal conversation. Sometimes I just say, "Just calling to check in." When you check in with someone, it's again just a way of making sure everything is okay with them, or perhaps I'm just telling you that, I'm doing fine on my end. It's typically a brief discussion of what's happening that day or recently. And another similar phrase you can use to just make sure you're initiating a pleasant, kind phone call without any true ulterior motive or urgent reason is, "I'm just calling to check up on you." If you check up on someone, you're specifically making sure they're okay, perhaps if they've been unwell or going through something. So these 3 phrases are very good and appropriate to use when you just want to call someone informally to make sure they're doing well and to maintain your connection. 2 phrases that can really help you start a conversation smoothly on the phone, especially if you maybe don't know the person very well or, don't usually talk on the phone with them often, and you might be a little nervous. You can comfortably say, "So, what have you been up to lately?" I think this is a very nice and engaging phrase because, it makes you seem genuinely interested in what they've been doing recently. And it makes you sound like you're a concerned friend, What have you been up to lately? I'd love to hear all about it. I want to know how you're doing. Or you can even more casually say, "So, what's new with you?" And this phrase is really useful on the phone, or it's equally useful in person too, just to casually ask, "Hey, what's new?" It just generally means, what's been happening in your life since we last spoke. Usually, you're implicitly asking about positive news or interesting developments, but sometimes people might respond with, "Oh, someone in my family was sick," or they'll tell you something unpleasant or bad that unfortunately happened. These are 2 really friendly, polite, and open-ended ways to start a conversation on the phone. Another reason someone might be calling you is, perhaps they'll begin by saying, "Listen, I've got a favor to ask," or more succinctly, "I've got a favor." People will often say, "I've got a favor to ask," just, to be polite and to gently warn you that they're about to ask you for something, giving you a moment to prepare. But this is considered a very polite and standard way to ask for a favor. "I've got a favor to ask, if you have a moment." And you might reply enthusiastically, "Shoot." Shoot in this context means, "Go ahead, ask me," or you can reply with the equally welcoming phrase, "I'm all ears." Many of my English learners also notice that Americans also love to say "totally" in response. Totally just means sure, yes, of course, absolutely, I'd be glad to help. So the phrases shoot, I'm all ears, or totally just mean you're enthusiastically saying yes. Go ahead, tell me about the favor. I'm happy to help if I can. They are very polite and encouraging responses in an informal, friendly conversation. One of the most common reasons to call someone on the phone must surely be to arrange a meeting or get together. So, here are a few great and essential phrases you'll need to know. If you're calling someone specifically to arrange a meeting, or if someone is calling you to try to, arrange a meeting or social gathering with you. So, again, much like at the beginning of our general conversation, sometimes we say, hey, what are you up to right now? Or more broadly, what are you up to these days? These phrases are just a casual way of asking if you're busy at that moment or generally. It might sound more like a general greeting initially, but when people say, hey, what are you up to, on the phone in this context, they're often trying to find out if you're currently busy or if you might have some free time available soon. Another common question, if someone is trying to arrange a meeting with you on the phone, maybe they want to go to the movies together, go out to a restaurant, or maybe they just, want to come over to your house for a visit. You can ask them, what time do you have in mind for that? This means, what specific time works best for you, or what approximate time were you planning on or thinking about? It's a great and polite way people ask, what time works for the other person? What time were you tentatively thinking of? Sometimes people don't just say, what time did you have in mind? People might more casually say, hey, what time were you thinking of meeting? And it means exactly the same thing. Like, what time works for you? What time were you planning on for this get-together? Another very important phrase for scheduling meetings and talking about timing is, when do you want to meet up? Whether you're planning on meeting at someone's house, a specific restaurant, or perhaps going to the park, you'll want to know, what time do you want to be there to see me? Essentially, what time do you want to meet up and begin our activity? And a very, very common question you'll frequently hear in the United States, especially among friends, is, your place or mine? Now, make sure if you say this, you're not being too presumptuous or forward, by assuming the person will automatically let you come over to their place or will definitely want to come to your house. Usually, you want to know someone pretty well before suggesting going to where they live, but you'll often just hear this question when people are casually planning things. If you guys are planning to go to someone's house to hang out, you can casually suggest, hey, so, your place or mine? Someone might say, for instance, want to have dinner with me on Tuesday night? And if you want to suggest the option of location, you can come to my place or I can come to yours. You can respond, oh, yeah, that sounds great. Your place or mine? I would actually consider this question very polite in many contexts because you're also kindly offering to host the person at your home, not just assuming they're inviting you to theirs or that they will host. Or if you have a good friend you hang out with quite often, and they say something like, hey, we should totally hang out this weekend, you can easily respond, yeah, sounds fun. Your place or mine? So it's just a very common and convenient way to arrange plans using this concise phrase. So, especially if you're planning a first date or going to spend significant time with someone for the very first time, it can be a bit, awkward at first, like, oh, I don't know exactly what place you're talking about, or I don't have your home address yet. So, here are a few helpful questions to help you figure out exactly where you should meet the person you're arranging to meet with. You can politely ask, could you tell me the address, please? And this particular question can be used effectively in both formal and informal. Everyday conversation. Sometimes, for convenience, I just say, can you just text me the details, because often I don't have a paper and a pen readily available, and while on the phone, it can be hard to, write down information quickly and accurately. But nowadays, almost everyone texts. So I just conveniently say, hey, just text me the details when you get a chance. It just means, please text me the information about where we're meeting, what time we're meeting, and basically everything I need to know. Or, for instance, the other day I went to a comedy show with my husband, my brother, and my sister-in-law, and my brother planned the whole outing, and he just said, don't worry, I'll send you all the details. So he promptly sent me, in a group text message, exactly where I needed to be, what time I needed to be there, and what restaurant we were going to meet at beforehand. It was a lot of fun, and it was so nice and easy because he just said, "I'll just send you the details. Pan out that way," meaning you don't have to worry about, where we're going or how to find it exactly. I'll text you all the necessary information. You don't need to write anything down right now. So the details in this context are basically the specific place and the agreed upon time. In many places across the United States, particularly outside of large metropolitan areas, we don't always have readily accessible public transportation like buses, subways, or trains. It's very common and often necessary to drive somewhere in a personal car. There are so many cars on the road, and almost everyone has to drive in many parts of the United States. So a very common question you'll hear if you're making plans over the phone is, "Do you want me to pick you up?" This means, do you want me to come to your house, or current location, to get you and give you a ride to our destination? It's a really polite and considerate way, to offer someone a ride if you think they might need one. Or, if you want to make sure the person has their own car or transportation, and you're not quite sure if they do, you can casually ask, "Hey, how are you getting there, by the way?" And they might then reply, "Oh, I'm driving myself," or "Actually, I think I might need a ride if that's okay." If you're going to a party or a social gathering and you're feeling a little nervous and perhaps potentially awkward, like I often do in new social situations, you might want to know in advance who's going to be there. So if someone invites you to dinner or some other event, you can casually ask, "Hey, so who's going to be there?" It just means, "Please tell me about all the people who are expected to attend, primarily because I need to make sure I know at least some of them, or I want to mentally prepare." Or maybe, just maybe, you don't particularly want a certain person to be there if you're going to go. So this is also a very important and practical question to ask sometimes. I'm definitely one of those people who's almost always hungry, or at least thinking about food. I'm always thinking about what's for dinner next, and if I'm making plans with someone over the phone, I almost invariably ask, "Have you eaten yet?" This question implies, are you currently hungry? Basically, it's a very polite and indirect way to ask something like, "Do you want to go eat something soon?" "Hey, have you eaten yet, or are you starving like I am?" And maybe you're going to meet them a little bit later in the day. And they might say, "No, I actually haven't eaten yet today." And you can then suggest, "Oh, well, in that case, let's definitely go eat when we meet up." Or you can use this very common and informal phrase, "Let's grab a bite." The phrase, "let's grab a bite," is just a casual slang expression that simply means, let's go to a restaurant, usually a casual one, and eat together. And usually, when we say a bite, we use this particular phrase when we're going to a very informal dining establishment. You typically wouldn't use it if you were going for fine dining or a very formal meal. I mean, if we're gonna grab a bite tonight, this phrase is strictly informal and relaxed. Let's grab a quick bite after work. Here in the United States, at least in most big cities and even many smaller towns, there are so many diverse restaurant options available because the United States is truly a cultural melting pot. And there are many different immigrant communities here that bring their delicious and varied types of food. And so you can ask someone, when deciding where to eat, "What do you think about Chinese tonight?" Or "What do you think about trying that new Vietnamese place?" Or perhaps, "What do you think about Mexican food for dinner?" It might sound a little strange out of context, but when you ask this type of question, you're usually specifically talking about the food itself. Like, "What do you think about these particular types of food? Would you be interested in going to eat these types of food with me?" So if someone asks, "What do you think about Mexican?" they're definitely not talking about what you think of Mexican people as a whole. They're specifically talking about what you think of Mexican cuisine and if you'd like to eat it. This is because people obviously have very different food preferences. And you might be asking, in effect, "Do you want to go eat this type of food with me?" And again, if you're trying to be polite and want to make sure the person has a convenient way to get where you're planning on going, you can offer, "Do you need a ride?" This implies that you're driving your own car or, someone you're with is driving, and you are able to pick them up and take them. Or you can proactively offer by saying, "Hey, don't worry about it, I'll drive." This is a friendly and helpful way to say, "I can take my car, and we can go together." This next question is probably more commonly asked among women, but men can certainly ask it too, because it's often important that you fit in appropriately with the dress code of where you're going. And if you should dress up formally or dress more casually, you should definitely ask your friend or host, "What should I wear for this?" And the person might then reply, "Oh, just so you know, this restaurant is actually very fancy. You should definitely wear something nice." Or conversely, to the question, "What should I wear?" they might respond, "Oh, you can just wear jeans and a t-shirt. It's not that fancy at all, it's very casual." Here are my favorite 3 phrases for, effectively and positively ending a phone conversation after making plans, just to express that you're happy about the plans that have been made. I'll often say, "Well, it's a plan then." This means, like, "Yep, we're all set, plans are confirmed. I'll see you then." Or you can even more enthusiastically say, "It's a date." You can even say this to just your friend when you've made plans. It doesn't have to be an actual romantic date you're going on with a girlfriend or boyfriend. I say this to my friends all the time when we're making plans or arranging to meet up for something fun. I just mean it's a solid, confirmed plan, and it's exciting, much like looking forward to a date. Or you can just simply say, with anticipation, "I can't wait." This just clearly means you're excited about the upcoming event. The plan is set. See you then. Now that we've covered some useful phrases to help you arrange a meeting with a friend in a more informal phone conversation setting, these next phrases will specifically help you when you're talking on the phone with someone for the purpose of making an official appointment. You might be making an appointment with a doctor, a dentist, or perhaps an appointment to see, a professional like a lawyer or an accountant. Whoever it is that you need to make an appointment with. The conversation in these situations will generally be more formal. Definitely, if you're calling any kind of company or professional office. So, let's go over these important phrases. So I'm definitely one of those people who, gets a little bit nervous when calling to make an official appointment, especially with someone I don't know, so I always like to think about exactly what I'll say when they answer the phone. And if English isn't your first language, it can also understandably be a bit nerve-wracking. It can certainly make you nervous when you have to call to make an appointment in a foreign language. So always just take a moment to think through in your mind what you'll say when they answer. So you might call, and they answer the phone politely, like, "Hello, Dr. Smith's office, how can I help you?" And you can then clearly state, "Hello, I need to make an appointment, please." Or I sometimes say, "Hi, I'm calling to schedule an appointment with Dr. Smith." This is a very common and perfectly acceptable way to say, "I just need to make an appointment. I'm calling to schedule an appointment." It's a good idea to memorize this phrase so that when someone answers the phone, you're ready to speak confidently and make that important appointment without hesitation. So, if someone answers the call and, after you state your purpose, says, "Okay, when do you want the appointment for?" they'll actually more likely just say, "Okay, what time generally works best for you?" And this is just kind of asking you for your general availability. Like morning, afternoon, or a specific day that works best for you. It's helpful to give them a time range if possible, because it can sometimes be so hard to find a mutually convenient time to make an appointment, especially if it's for a popular doctor's appointment. I personally find it very difficult sometimes to find a time slot that perfectly fits my busy schedule. A phrase that's also very common in this context is, "Okay, when are you free?" or "When are they, the professional, free?" This is simply asking when their schedule is available or open for new appointments. Sometimes, if there are very few openings available in the near future, the person you're calling might just directly suggest, "Okay, how about Tuesday at 1:30 p.m.? And then they'll ask, "Does that work with your schedule?" So this question just means, will that particular time slot fit into your existing schedule, or will you be free and available then? Does that work with your schedule, or should I look for another option? A very common phrase in business English, and also in appointment scheduling, is "I can pencil you in." If an assistant offers to pencil you in, it usually means there's not much available time for the appointment or meeting, but they'll be able to just barely squeeze you into the schedule. When on the phone with a representative from a company or a medical office, they'll often need to ask you to confirm certain personal information for their records. So they'll typically say, "Can you please confirm your full date of birth for me?" They're politely asking for your birthday. This is a very, very formal and standard way to ask for it. Or they'll similarly say, "Can you confirm your current mailing address, please?" This means, "Can you tell me where you currently live to ensure our records are up to date?" You can also use this type of question yourself. I always do it on the phone because I'm personally the worst at writing down information correctly the first time. I'll often ask, "Could you please confirm the appointment time again for me, just to be sure?" And they'll typically reply, "Yes, certainly, it's Tuesday at 1:30 p.m., and then I'll double check and make sure I have it right in my calendar." Or I'll proactively say, "Hey, just to confirm, the appointment is on Tuesday at 1:30 p.m., correct?" And they'll respond, "Yes, that's correct." Or, if I made a mistake, "Sorry, no, I actually said Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. And I appreciate that clarification. If someone gives you an appointment time and unfortunately, it just doesn't work for you, you can politely inquire, "Do you have anything available perhaps the next week?" Or alternatively, "Do you have anything available on a Friday?" For example, "Do you have anything available on a specific day?" So you're specifically asking about a particular day of the week. Or, if you're asking about availability in a specific month, you can say, "Do you have anything available in February, or perhaps in January, whatever it is that suits your needs?" And then, if someone offers you a time slot that still doesn't quite work for you, you can further ask, "Do you have anything available a little earlier in the day?" Or conversely, "Do you have anything available perhaps later in the afternoon?" And again, if you're like me and just want to be absolutely sure you have the correct information noted down, you can say, "I just want to quickly clarify the exact time or the correct date for that." Or, if you already have an appointment scheduled, and you're calling the office or company back, perhaps a few days later, and you just want to make sure you have the correct time and date in your records, you can just call them and say, "Hey, I just want to quickly confirm the time and date of my upcoming appointment with Dr. X." So, now that we've talked about all these various ways you'll be talking on the phone with people, and some really common and useful phrases for those situations, let's talk about how you're going to end a phone conversation smoothly and politely without seeming awkward or abrupt. A great and versatile phrase that works well in both formal and informal conversation is to simply say, "Okay, take care then." This is a very kind and common greeting, or rather, a way to say goodbye at the end of a phone conversation. "Okay, sounds good. Hey, take care." If you're having a more informal, casual conversation with a friend, you'll often say, "All right, have a good one." Have a good one is a very common and friendly phrase used both on the phone and in real-life conversation to simply mean, have a good day or enjoy the rest of your day. Now, if you're having a more formal conversation, like when you're making an appointment over the phone, you should probably say, "Have a good day" or "Have a great day." Both of these are perfectly acceptable, polite, and very friendly ways to conclude a formal call. And if you happen to be in the southern United States, a very common and characteristic phrase you might hear is someone saying, "Have a blessed day." You know, it always makes me chuckle just a little bit because I'm not originally from the South. So when someone says this to me on the phone, it stands out just because I'm not entirely used to hearing it regularly. Thank you for your help. Have a blessed day. Another good way, especially if someone has helped you significantly on the phone, is you can end the conversation by sincerely saying, "Thanks again for all your help, I'll talk to you soon." Thanks again is just another nice way to express your genuine gratitude, and to acknowledge that this phone conversation was indeed helpful and appreciated. Thanks again. In a formal phone conversation, someone at a company might say to you as they conclude, "Thanks for calling ABC Company," or you can also certainly say to someone, if appropriate, "Thanks for calling me back." And the last 3 phrases I have for you are generally more suitable for your informal, friendly conversations with people you know well. A very cool and casual way to say goodbye is to say, "Hey, take it easy." Take it easy just means, have a good day, relax, don't stress too much. Alright man, take it easy, take it easy. It literally implies, don't work too hard or worry too much, but it's constantly used in informal conversation just to be friendly and laid back. I just think it's a very cool and relaxed way to say goodbye. Take it easy. Or, if you've just made plans with someone, and you're actually going to see them later that same day, or maybe very soon in the near future, you can appropriately say, talk to you soon, or, even more directly, see you soon, if you're indeed actually going to see them in person shortly. And if you're talking to someone you don't communicate with very often, but you'd like to maintain contact, you can end by saying, alright, well, it was great talking to you. Keep in touch. This just means, please call me again sometime, or let's not lose contact. I genuinely enjoyed talking to you. Keep in touch. Let's first start with some important formal phrases specifically for professional communication. When you meet someone in a professional context, of course, you'll want to say good morning, or afternoon/evening, and then say their name. So, let's imagine for a moment that we're talking to someone named Joe. Good morning, Joe. How are you doing today? And only in a truly formal situation, or when meeting someone of high status for the first time, I want you to consider saying, it's a genuine pleasure to meet you. Instead of the more common nice to meet you or, oh, it's good to meet you. Let's elevate it to, it's a pleasure to meet you. If you're addressing several people at once, perhaps at the start of a meeting or presentation, and you want to state your name and role, you can formally say, allow me to introduce myself. This is just a great and polite way to start a conversation or presentation, by clearly introducing yourself. And it gracefully lets the audience or the people you're talking to know that you need a moment to say your name, and perhaps you'll also state your job title or something relevant about yourself. Allow me to introduce myself, I'm Emma, and I'll be leading today's workshop. When you're trying to be exceptionally polite in a professional setting, it's very important to consistently express your gratitude or appreciation for others' time and effort. When we're communicating in written text, for example via email, and you want to acknowledge that you're glad someone responded very quickly to your message, you can write, I sincerely appreciate your prompt response. I say this, or something very similar. All the time because I really do like and appreciate it when people respond to emails very quickly, especially if I have an urgent request or an important question that needs answering. Sometimes, if you're sending someone an idea, a proposal, or something you're hoping will happen, you can professionally end your email by saying, thank you for considering my proposal, and I look forward to your feedback. Or, if someone responds to your idea, even if it's not an immediate yes, you can just acknowledge their attention by saying, thank you for considering my proposal. I will wait to hear back from you regarding the next steps. This phrase, thank you for considering my proposal, just essentially means, thank you for your valuable time, thank you for thinking about it. And you can either thank them in advance for their anticipated consideration or thank them after they've actually considered it. If you want to formally say you're glad someone helped you with a task or provided support, you can express this by saying, I truly appreciate your assistance with this matter. This is a great and appropriately formal phrase in professional English. It's also very important in professional settings to make sure someone isn't overly busy, or to ascertain if they actually have time to help you, before you directly ask for help or before you just assume they can and will help you. A great and considerate phrase for this is, may I have a moment of your valuable time, please? If someone has been particularly responsive or exceptionally helpful, going above and beyond, and you want to sincerely thank them, you can say, I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude for your unwavering support. This phrase is very useful and impactful if someone has been very helpful or has strongly supported you, Perhaps they had your back in a difficult situation. They supported your ideas publicly, or they spoke highly of you to other influential people. You can then genuinely say, I'd like to express my gratitude for your support, and this is a really amazing and highly formal phrase to convey that deep appreciation. When you join a new work team, or begin working closely with new people on a project, or embark on a new collaborative project with people you haven't worked with extensively before, you can make a positive first impression by saying, "I'm truly delighted to be working with such a talented and dedicated team." So this is a really thoughtful and formal compliment you can give to a group of people you're about to work with, again. Whether in real life during a meeting or expressed via email. The phrase, "Please let me know if there's anything at all I can assist you with." This is a great and proactive phrase to just offer your help and assistance to colleagues or clients, showing your willingness to contribute. Let's talk about some more informal phrases specifically for building rapport and positive relationships in the workplace. So, when you're actively building rapport, it means you're consciously building stronger relationships and fostering trust with other people. And this is, of course, very important in any office or team environment. And it's precisely the reason why you need to learn and use informal English just as much as formal English in appropriate contexts. When you can talk to someone more casually, as if they're more of a friend than just a coworker, it really helps to build trust and a more positive connection with the other person. A more informal and friendly way to say hello in the workplace is to simply greet someone with, "Hi, name. How's it going today?" If you're just trying to build a good working relationship and not be overly formal all the time in a professional environment, a great way I like to suggest to all my English learners to greet someone they're seeing again is to say warmly, "It's nice to see you again, name." This phrase is, of course, based on the fact that you have met this person before, and it shows you remember them. Did you have a good weekend? It's always important and a nice touch to ask people about their weekend and show a little appropriate interest in their personal life, especially when you work closely with them. It helps humanize the workplace. A nice and encouraging compliment you can give someone on your work team, perhaps after a successful project, is, you can say, "You know, you really bring a lot to the team, your contributions are invaluable." This is just a sincere way to praise their work, their skills, and their positive impact. Another positive thing we in English often like to say to each other, acknowledging their demeanor, is, "You are always so positive, it's really great to be around." This is a wonderful compliment to their consistently optimistic attitude, their general positivity, and the happiness they bring to the workplace. I just want to tell you how much I genuinely enjoyed working on this project together with you. This is a much more informal, yet heartfelt, way to just tell someone you truly enjoy working with them, and hopefully, you'll have opportunities to work with them more in the future. You are really moving the needle on this initiative. This is a very cool and modern business phrase that just means the person is truly making significant progress or having a noticeable impact. Maybe they're doing something innovative and new that no one has done before in your workplace, or maybe they're just being incredibly productive and achieving a lot. They're moving the needle. It's like they're visibly making things happen and driving progress forward. Honestly, I couldn't ask for a better teammate than you. This is an extremely nice and highly appreciative compliment to give someone in your workplace, indicating deep satisfaction with their collaboration. What do you think about grabbing some lunch sometime this week? Just to catch up? I always talk about how in English we frequently say grab lunch, grab breakfast, grab dinner. It simply means to go eat a meal with another person, usually in a casual setting. So if you're asking someone, "What do you think about this idea?" it essentially means, like, "What are your thoughts? Would you like to do this with me? I'm really looking forward to working with you on this new assignment." This particular phrase should generally be used when you first meet someone new you'll be collaborating with, or at the start of a new project, and you just want to nicely and positively say that you're excited to work together. You hope this working relationship will be good and productive, and that you're genuinely happy to work with this person. Let's move on to the next set of phrases, which are specifically for conducting effective meetings and delivering engaging presentations. So they will also tend to be a bit more formal in nature. A great way to start a presentation that's scheduled in the afternoon is to just warmly say, "Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for being here today." This is clearly showing your gratitude for everyone taking the time to listen, and acknowledging that you have their valuable attention and time. Before we begin today's session, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge everyone's incredibly hard work on this leading up to today. This is a wonderful compliment to the people you work with. And you're just taking the time at the outset to make everyone feel good, valued, and to know that you've genuinely seen and appreciated them working hard. This is a great phrase to use, especially if you're in a leadership position or a boss. When you want to add your thoughts or, comment on what someone else has already said in a meeting, let's imagine again we're talking about what Joe said. You can politely interject, "If I may, I'd like to add on to what Joe insightfully said earlier." This is the most common and accepted way you can, politely discuss an idea that's directly related to something someone else has already contributed to the meeting. I'd like to briefly add on to what Joe said earlier regarding the budget. If you want to agree with someone's point during a discussion, remember it's always a good practice to use the other person's name to personalize your agreement. You can say, "I completely agree with your perspective on that, Joe. That's a very valid point." And this is just clearly agreeing with their idea and how they see or interpret things. If you want to thank someone for saying something particularly important or bringing a critical piece of information to light in a meeting, you can express your appreciation by saying, "Thank you so much for bringing that crucial point to our attention, Joe. We appreciate it." If you want someone to explain what they're talking about in a little more detail during a meeting, because perhaps it wasn't entirely clear, you can politely request, "Can you elaborate on that point a bit more for us?" Please, for me, and generally, to elaborate means to expand upon, or tell more, or explain in greater detail. And when you really don't understand what someone is talking about, or perhaps how they arrived at the particular idea or conclusion they're presenting, the formal and polite way to say, "Oh, could you explain that further?" is to inquire, "Can you perhaps show us how you reached your conclusion on that matter?" When someone shares a really valuable opinion or offers a significant insight in a meeting, you can acknowledge their contribution by telling them, "I genuinely appreciate your input on this, Sarah. Let's explore that idea further as a group." So, input here refers to their opinion, thoughts, or suggestions. So, "I appreciate your input" means I appreciate or I value that you're telling me how you feel about what's happening in the meeting or within the company. Let's take a brief moment now to review the key points we've discussed so far. So, key points are the main ideas, the most important takeaways, or what you've been primarily talking about. This action of reviewing is really important in a productive meeting to ensure everyone is on the same page. Key points. If there are no further comments or questions at this stage, let's smoothly move on to the next agenda item. So, often in the workplace, when you have a formal meeting, you usually have an agenda, which is a list of specific issues to discuss, decisions to make, or problems to resolve. And so often, when you want the meeting to continue progressing efficiently, you use this kind of transitional phrase. If there are no other comments at this time, it means if no one else has anything further to say on the current topic, you need to move on to the next item. In conclusion, based on our discussion today, I firmly believe that this proposed approach will ultimately lead to significant success. So, when you're formally ending a meeting or a presentation, the most conventional and formal way to signal the end is to say, "In conclusion." Or, if you're finishing a speech you were giving, and, you just want to effectively sum everything up and confidently state something like, "This work, I believe, this strategic approach or your well-thought-out idea will undoubtedly lead to success. Let's talk about how we can master formal written communication, such as emails, and still be very polite." You might begin an email by saying, "Dear Joe, I hope this email finds you well and that you're having a productive week." And if someone responds very quickly to a question or request you sent, you can show your appreciation by writing, "Thank you for your prompt and helpful response to my recent inquiry." And inquiry is indeed a more formal word for a question. If you've spoken with someone previously, perhaps on the phone or in person, and now you're going to email them about what you talked about as a follow-up, you can begin with, "I just wanted to follow up on our recent conversation regarding X." And often in the workplace, you'll need to attach or send a document via email, especially if someone specifically requests it. So you can clearly state, "As per your request, here is the document you requested, it is attached to this email for your review." Or, more concisely, you can say, "Please see the attached document for details." This phrasing clearly draws attention to the important fact that you've attached a document to the email. A great way to end an email in which you've laid out your thoughts, suggestions, or ideas to someone is to politely say, "I look forward to hearing your valuable thoughts on this matter at your earliest convenience." This just clearly means you're anticipating and looking forward to receiving their opinion or feedback. If you want to praise someone specifically for, noticing an important mistake or something significant that was unfortunately missed by others, you can use the appreciative phrase, "Your keen attention to detail in this instance is much appreciated and very valuable." If you think something you previously said or wrote might have caused confusion, you can proactively clarify by saying, "I sincerely apologize for any confusion my previous email may have caused. Let me clarify my point." This means, to clarify is to make something clearer, more explicit, or more understandable for someone. When you want to make sure someone doesn't hesitate or, isn't afraid to ask questions about something you've presented, and you genuinely want to provide the best possible customer service or just, maintain the best possible working relationship, you can inclusively say, "If you have any questions or require further clarification, please do not hesitate to ask." And I often use this or a similar phrase at the end of my emails, just to let someone know that I'm readily available and happy to answer any questions they might have. In professional English correspondence, we often use best regards or kind regards at the end of an email, just before the signature, and some people even just shorten it to best. For example, best regards, Kayla, or simply best, Kayla. If you want to start a formal message with just a nice, standard pleasantry, you can say, "I trust this message finds you in good health and spirits." This is a more formal equivalent of "I hope you're doing well." Let's talk about some great English phrases you can effectively use to wrap up a conversation or meeting in the workplace. You can just use the transitional phrase, to briefly sum up our productive conversation today. Or, to encourage reflection. You can say, "Let's take a moment to reflect on what we've covered in this meeting." This means, let's pause and think, let's briefly talk about what we've already discussed and decided today. Before we conclude, I encourage everyone to share any final thoughts or questions they may have. This means you're politely asking everyone to voice their opinion or seek clarification on something before you officially end the meeting or conversation. Thank you all for your active participation and valuable contributions today. With this statement, you want to sincerely thank everyone for really speaking up, being present and engaged, and actively participating in the meeting. As we move forward from this meeting, let's be sure to keep these key action points in mind. This just means, please remember what I was talking about, and what we agreed upon. Don't forget these very important ideas or decisions as we continue our work and future discussions. So this phrase key points, or action points, remember, means the most important things, decisions, or ideas. I strongly encourage you all to try and apply these concepts and strategies to your daily interactions and tasks. This is a slightly more formal or far-out way to just say, like, please actually take what we talked about today and actively use it in your work. Please feel free to reach out directly to me if you have any further questions or if you need any additional clarification on any of these items. This is another really polite, nice, and somewhat informal way to say, I'm available for questions if you need me. Don't hesitate to ask me because I really want you to understand fully, Dan. So feel free to reach out. To reach out in this context means to just talk to me. Call me or email me. Keep up the fantastic work, everyone. This would be a nice and encouraging wish for everyone on your team, acknowledging that they're really working well and effectively in your workplace. I'm extremely confident that our continued teamwork and collaboration will lead to outstanding success. And finally, when you want to, just positively wrap up what you've said to someone, or a group, and express that you're looking forward to working with them further in the future. You can say, I'm very much looking forward to our continued collaboration on this and future projects. And this would be a great closing statement in a face-to-face meeting, a Zoom meeting, or even at the end of an email. If you said this to someone with sincerity, I'm looking forward to our continued collaboration. You'll frequently hear Americans say, when onboarding a new team member, let's get you up to speed on everything. This common idiom up to speed means they'll provide you with all the necessary information and context that will help you be on the same level of understanding as the rest of the company or the specific team you're working with. So, if you're joining a sales team, for example, maybe they'll tell you all about the product lines, target markets, and current sales strategies. Or if you're more in a tech role, they'll let you know what projects they've been diligently working on and what progress they've made so far. They will get you up to speed. It's a very natural and efficient way to say they'll teach you what you absolutely need to know to function effectively in your new role. The next phrase is really commonly used in American corporations and business settings. They often say they have something in the pipeline. If they have a new product or project in the pipeline, it simply means they have something that's currently under development and is coming soon. So, if there's a major project that's described as being in the pipeline, it signifies that it's not finished or completed yet, but it's on its way and progressing. It's being actively worked on right now by the team. So instead of just saying, "We have something new coming up" or "We're currently working on something," American speakers will often more dynamically say, "We have several exciting new features in the pipeline." And I like to think of this particular phrase metaphorically, like an oil pipeline, as if something valuable is steadily moving through it towards completion or delivery. This next phrase is used in the complete opposite way, to denote cessation. If we're going to definitively stop something or quit a project, perhaps due to poor performance or a change in strategy, we'll often say that we're going to pull the plug on it. So instead of just saying we're going to stop a project, imagine your company has a particular project that's unfortunately losing a lot of money and showing no signs of improvement. The management might then decide, "We're going to have to pull the plug on that initiative." It's a pretty drastic and final sounding phrase, "You're going to pull the plug on something." It literally evokes the image of unplugging a machine, thereby stopping its power supply and function. So if you hear an American colleague say that we're going to pull the plug on something, it unequivocally means we're going to stop it completely. We're going to quit it. We're going to stop putting any more energy, resources, or time into it. I always like to say that when you're at a new job, it's natural to feel a little nervous and overwhelmed at first. You might really feel like you don't quite understand exactly what you're doing, but after a little while, with practice and experience, you eventually get the hang of it. This common idiom is the most frequent way I hear speakers express the idea that you'll gradually acquire the necessary skills, knowledge, and confidence to do something well and efficiently. So, maybe speaking English fluently was very hard for you at first. But with consistent effort, you're now really getting the hang of it. It just simply means your skills are noticeably developing and improving. You're becoming good and more comfortable at something that was once challenging. When I hear Americans in the workplace say they've described something sufficiently and they think you now understand the main idea because they've talked about it long enough, they might just conclude with, "and so on, and so forth," and you get the picture. So if you're telling someone they get the picture, it implies they understand it well enough for the current purpose. I'm not going to elaborate on it any further because I believe you get the picture. This phrase is probably used more often on the phone or in quick updates than in a detailed face-to-face meeting. Because on the phone, you often want to be relatively brief and concise. You generally don't want to have a long, rambling, and overly detailed conversation. So you'll describe something just enough for someone to get the picture and understand the essentials. This next phrase is quite useful to know because it can sometimes be a bit confusing for English learners if they haven't encountered it before. The phrase is brownie points. So, if you get brownie points for doing something, it means you did something good or helpful, and while you won't get a real tangible reward for it, like a bonus, or you won't get more money or a pay raise specifically for it, people will just think you did well. They'll appreciate it, and you'll get intangible brownie points for it, essentially, favor or approval. So, maybe you were way ahead of schedule on a task. You completed a work assignment very quickly, much faster than expected, and your boss says, "Great job on that." You might later tell a colleague, "Yep, I think I got some brownie points for that one." It just means you received praise or made your boss, him or her, say "well done," but you don't get anything official or monetary for the good thing you did. It's just brownie points, a kind of informal social currency in the workplace. So, when we say brownie points, it's an unofficial, non-monetary reward or acknowledgement for your positive actions. When you're working, do you tend to stop exactly when you're supposed to finish your workday, or do you sometimes find yourself needing to burn the midnight oil? This evocative phrase, to burn the midnight oil, means you're working so late into the night that it's metaphorically like you have to burn extra oil in a lamp to keep the lights on so you can continue working. Obviously, we don't literally burn oil in our modern homes or workplaces anymore to keep the lights on, but it's an old and enduring phrase that's still commonly used today to say someone is working very, very late, often past their usual hours. Or, if you've been consistently working very late recently due to a deadline or heavy workload, you might wearily say, "I've really been burning the midnight oil lately to get this report finished." It just effectively means I'm working a lot of overtime or very late hours. The next phrase can be said in two distinct ways to convey two different, almost opposite, meanings. You can tell someone they're on the hook for something. This generally means they're obligated or responsible for doing it, or for the consequences if something goes wrong. Or, if they make a significant mistake, say, they send the wrong financial number in an important email to a client, you can say, "Unfortunately, you're on the hook for that mistake." Or, conversely, if you want to tell someone they're not responsible or not at fault for a particular mistake, or that they are excused from an obligation, you can reassure them by saying, "Don't worry, you're off the hook for that one." It kind of means you're forgiving them for the error and are not too concerned about their mistake in this instance. You're not going to hold it against them or penalize them. You're not going to tell them their mistake was very bad or had serious repercussions. You can just say that you're off the hook for that one, it's been resolved. This next phrase can be very useful when you're bargaining, negotiating, or just generally if you're trying to find a compromise or a middle ground with someone on an issue. So, if you're bargaining with someone over a price, say, they offer you $100 for an item, and you want them to pay $200, you can propose a compromise by saying, "Can you perhaps meet me halfway at $150? Similarly, if you're working with a colleague on a shared task, you might say, "Hey, could you possibly meet me halfway on this and help me with this section of the report?" So it's like saying, "I'm going to do my part, but I need you to also do a little work or make a concession." If you're telling someone you need them to meet you halfway, it's like you're asking them to give you a little something, make a concession, so you can then return the favor, or so that a deal can be reached. You could offer them a slight discount on an item, or whatever it is you're selling them, as part of meeting halfway. This phrase "meet halfway" is just a very common way to describe reaching a compromise. Now, imagine someone offers you a really bad deal or tries to sell you something substandard. So, maybe they offer you a terrible price for your own goods, or they try to sell you a very poor quality product. And they were perhaps talking about it as if you're getting a fantastic deal or a very good, high quality product. If you realize you've been deceived, you can use this phrase, but be careful with it, because it can be a bit offensive to directly accuse someone of giving you something bad. You can later say you were sold a bill of goods. This phrase actually sounds like it shouldn't be something negative. But literally, it means you were deceived or given something worthless, like junk, under false pretenses. So you never want to sell someone a bill of goods, and you certainly never want to be sold a bill of goods yourself. It means you got a very bad deal, were tricked, or received a shoddy product. If you urgently need someone to fit you into their very busy schedule, and you know they have very little free time, and you just need a very short meeting, you can politely ask them if they can pencil you in. This metaphorical phrase means, if you have very little time available, it's like you're asking them to write your meeting in their calendar very lightly, with a pencil, implying it's tentative or can be easily erased if something more important comes up. You're asking them to pencil you in. It's not a literal phrase, of course, it's entirely figurative. So it just means, could you possibly squeeze in a short, brief meeting for me into your already very busy schedule? And often, if we say, "Can you pencil me in for tomorrow afternoon?" you're usually asking at the very last minute, or with very short notice. You're asking for a meeting very late in the planning process. You didn't plan it far in advance, so you need them to try and pencil you in if at all possible. If you need someone to do some math, like some calculations, and you need them to figure out the final price of something complex, or perhaps you need them to figure out how much total money needs to be paid after various factors are considered, and there are a lot of different variables or components involved in the calculation. Americans will often say they need to crunch the numbers. So you might ask a colleague, "How much will this entire project cost us?" And the person might reply, "Well, I really need to sit down and crunch the numbers carefully, and then I can give you an accurate price or estimate." So, to crunch numbers simply means to perform all the necessary calculations, add, subtract, multiply, divide, everything required for the mathematical computation, and it's often used in a general math context too, informally, to say something like, "Let's solve this complex equation. Let's crunch the numbers and find the answer." The next phrase is very commonly heard when you're applying for a job or discussing desirable employee traits. Often, employers are specifically looking for self-starters. If you describe yourself as a self-starter, it's essentially the same as saying you're a self-motivator or very proactive. You don't need a lot of external help or constant supervision to figure out how to do your job effectively. If you confidently say in an interview, "I'm really a self-starter," it means I'm genuinely motivated, resourceful, and independent. I don't need someone to constantly help me or tell me what to do all day long. I can figure out what I need to do, prioritize tasks, and I'll do it successfully and efficiently. So, if you're in a job interview, definitely try to describe yourself as a self-starter, if it's true, because it's considered a very positive and sought-after quality by employers. Here's another interesting idiom that's very commonly used in the business world, and it's one we've touched upon before because it's so relevant. The phrase is "to move the goalposts." So this is definitely an idiom derived from sports. It's like in American football where there are 2 goalposts at each end of the field. Or also in soccer, there are 2 goalposts, and the ball has to go through them or into the net between them to score a goal. So in this idiomatic usage, whatever the initial requirement or target is in a business context, say, you have a specific sales target to meet. If you diligently work and finally reach that target, and then someone in authority suddenly says, "Actually, that's not enough, I now need you to sell even more to be considered successful," you can rightly complain, "You're really moving the goalposts on me here, and that's not fair." It's like they physically moved the actual goalposts just as you were about to score, so you didn't actually score the goal or meet the objective as originally defined. You can describe a person, a product, or a business unit as a cash cow if it consistently brings in a lot of money or profit with relatively little effort or investment. And I would say this isn't necessarily a very rude phrase in a business context, although you usually don't want to call a person a cow in general English because that usually means you're impolitely calling them fat. But if you're saying something like a particular product is a cash cow, for example, "This new app I'm selling is really a cash cow for the company," it just means it has brought you a significant amount of money and continues to do so. Or, "My best salesperson in the company is an absolute cash cow, she consistently exceeds her targets." It means they have earned a lot of money for you or the business. If you want to ask if certain information is the most current and includes all recent updates, you should definitely phrase your question as, "Is this information up to date? Does it contain all the relevant information for every day leading up to today, or is it missing recent developments?" So try to avoid just saying, "Is this the latest information?" Instead, try to more precisely ask, "Is this report completely up to date?" If you're in a long meeting, and things are dragging a bit, informally someone, perhaps the facilitator, might just say, "Okay team, do you want to take 5? This just simply means, do you want to take a short, usually 5-minute, break? People don't often say explicitly, "Do you want to take a 5-minute break?" They'll more commonly and casually say, "Do you want to take 5 before we continue?" And there's even a popular candy bar in the US called Take 5. And its name just cleverly refers to taking a nice little 5-minute break to enjoy a treat. Instead of saying more formally that you need to find some new business, or find more customers, or find ways to increase sales, you'll often hear American English speakers say more dynamically, "Let's go out and drum up some new business," or "We need to drum up some more customers this quarter," or "Our team's goal is to drum up more sales." This idiomatic phrase "to drum up" essentially means to find, to generate, or to solicit, often with some effort and enthusiasm. If you're drumming up something, you're actively bringing it up, creating interest, and finding it. It's a very strange and old-fashioned sounding phrase. Perhaps, but it just means you need to actively look for or generate something, like support or business. And it's used quite often in business contexts. The most natural and common idiom to say you need to ask a very knowledgeable person some specific questions to gain their insights is to say you need to pick their brain. It's a funny and somewhat graphic phrase, I know, and I'm aware that other languages might have their own equally strange or vivid phrases, but in English, it just means to informally ask some questions of someone who is considered very knowledgeable or an expert about a particular subject. So often, English learners will politely ask me, "Hey Emma, can I pick your brain for a minute about this confusing grammar point or this particular phrase?" And I'll typically reply, "Yes, of course. What do you need help with? Feel free to ask me any questions." Finally, when you're nearing the end of the workday, or perhaps the scheduled end of a meeting, and someone wants to convey that we're running out of available time, simply saying "we're running out of time" can sound a bit clunky or abrupt. So usually, people will more smoothly say, "Okay everyone, we are running short on time, so let's wrap this up." And if, on the other hand, we're not short on time, if we actually have enough or ample time remaining, you can positively state, "No need to rush, we are okay on time for now." So people either say we're short on time, which clearly means we don't have enough time left. "We're running short, so let's be quick." Or they might say, "We are okay on time" or "we're good on time." This means we have more than enough time, or at least just enough time, to comfortably do what we need to do for the remainder of the workday or in the current meeting. So, now that we've thoroughly and comprehensively covered all these important and highly useful business phrases, I strongly encourage you to take at least a moment, ideally more, and make a conscious effort to try and put them into practice in your own English communication as soon as realistically possible. Don't wait indefinitely for some perfect moment or an absolutely ideal situation to arise before you start. Begin applying what you've learned today, right now, with the English material you have at hand or the conversations you engage in. Choose something new from our discussion, perhaps something that challenges you just a little bit, and just see how much of it you can understand and potentially use by applying these new approaches and vocabulary. Try to consciously focus on the specific vocabulary and particular phrases we discussed in detail today. Listen actively when others use them, try to understand the context, and please don't worry too much if you don't catch or master everything on the very first try. The main and most important goal is always steady, consistent progress, not some unattainable, immediate perfection. Take it step by step, patiently and gradually. You absolutely don't need to try to master everything all at once, that would be overwhelming. Every little bit of focused practice genuinely matters and helps to build your skills. And every single time you listen attentively and make an effort to speak, you're almost imperceptibly developing and refining your skills. The more you actively and consistently engage with the English language in various rich and meaningful ways, the more comfortable, natural, and ultimately confident you'll feel when listening and speaking. If you continue to practice regularly, and continue to actively apply these effective strategies we've discussed, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that you'll see amazing and truly significant improvements in your overall English skills. The more you courageously immerse yourself in the language, the more natural and ultimately easy it will seem to you over time. And always remember that learning English is an exciting, ongoing, and potentially lifelong journey, not an exhausting, short-term sprint to a finish line. You're already on the right path by being here and learning, and every bit of your dedicated practice matters immensely and brings you ever closer to your language learning goals. So now, I invite you to take a deep breath, try to relax your mind and body, and genuinely enjoy the process of learning and communicating itself. Let's continue this fascinating and rewarding journey together, as a community. Keep listening intently, keep using what you hear in your own speech, keep learning new things every day, and keep moving forward, steadily, step by step. You've definitely got this.